Welcome to another episode of Firm Foundations with your hosts CJ and Tony. Today we're looking at chapter 11 in Genesis. We're going to talk about the Tower of Babel and try to get y'all to think like you've never thought about this chapter before. We're going to be going into some historical details from outside the Bible, just what was happening in the region that it's talking about, and the possibility of where Babel, the Tower of Babel, was, because surprise, it might not be the city of Babylon as we popularly think of it.
All the stories that we're told.
Yeah, and we're going to look at a 2,000-year tradition of where it's said to be outside of the city of Babylon. Uh, yeah, we're gonna talk about the mosaic sandwich that is staring us right in the face. It's very meaty, very thick. It's more than a foot long. It's amazing. Um, and we might come away with more questions than answers today. Um,
It seems like it's a straightforward chapter, but there's a lot of other things going on here,
yeah,
and a lot of information that most people don't look at.
you could write entire volumes on the first 9 verses alone. Um, it's densely packed with a lot of reading between the lines, with hyperlinks to extra biblical sources. Um, so this should be interesting. I hope you'll stay for the whole ride, and let's get to it.
Yeah, I may have to call my wife and tell her I'll be late for supper.
Hopefully not that long. Let's keep it. Let's try to keep it shorter than that.
Okay.
But all right.
Ready? Okay. Chapter 11. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there.
Mm.
Then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. Now I was reading something interesting about this. Uh, Normally, you would lay your brick mold out and let it dry in the sun and bake that way, but now they're wanting it quicker results so they can hurry up and build this thing.
Mm.
And that the asphalt, which is still available today in that region, that
Yeah.
there's things that have been put together with that slimy stuff, whatever it is, that just can't be pulled apart.
Yeah.
And actually, I meant to ask you that earlier and I forgot, but do you have anything as far as the fact that they went from letting them dry in the sun to bake to hurry up and get it done?
Good question. I never thought of it in that sense. The way I was looking at it. Before I answer that, let's actually talk about this mosaic sandwich, because it's going to segue into that when we're talking about who these people were that traveled from the east and found the land of Shinar. So as you noted last week in chapter 10, it goes from uh, a wide lens angle to pinpointing a certain line of genealogical line of family lineage. So from Noah and his 3 sons, and we looked and saw it talk about the children of Japhet. We saw it talk about the children of Ham, and then it narrowed in on the descendants of Shem. And just to think about where they were living, you have Ham and his descendants mostly in Africa, and Japhet and his descendants in Europe, northern Anatolia, and um, all the way out to um, East Asia uh, and Southeast Asia. But Shem was confined pretty much between the Levant, so the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, where all the ites live, and Elam, which is uh, part of modern day Iran, the southwestern coastal area of Iran. And that's kind of where these people were. So we were already seeing a kind of a dispersion being mentioned. And actually, verse 32 says the nations were divided on the earth after the flood. Um, but then we get this talk about the Tower of Babel, followed by a further narrowing down our vision towards Shem's descendants, and specifically his great whatever grandson Terah's descendants. Um, so it's telling us to look at the Tower of Babel in this term. What's going on at the Tower of Babel should be thought of in terms of how the nations dispersed, starting with after the flood, and what it has to tell us about Terah's descendants, most notably our father Abraham. Uh, and we talked about how there could have been two dispersions. One after the flood itself, with the sons dispersing amongst themselves and staking out claims on these separate continents as their descendants populated the earth. But then also there's what we have traditionally, both Jews and Christians, thought of as the proper dispersion, the actual dispersion and origin of all languages in the Tower of Babel. But I'm going to be explaining why I think that it's actually talking about a local dispersion, more of a dissolving of an empire, and not a global um, dispersion. I think the global dispersion started right after Noah and his children came out of the ark, after Ham and his son Canaan and that debacle, which we talked about last episode, all the sins that gone on there, and the ramifications it had for the family, um, briefly mentioned. Um, I think that was probably the impetus of the first dispersion. Like, we can't even live together because of what happened. This is just disgusting, and
I'm getting away from you.
yeah, a shattering of the family in one sense. But then we come to the Tower of Babel, and we see that link between two separate events in the last verse of chapter 10 and the first two verses that you just read of chapter 11. Let me go over them one more time.
Well, if I may interrupt,
Yeah.
We have a habit of separating things in the Bible, whereas chapter 11 did not exist. In Moses' time, this is written all as one.
Yeah.
There's no separation. So it was just to make it easier to understand, to highlight. Like chapter 11 is called the Tower of Babel. Moses did not put in between their Tower of Babel, by the way.
Yeah.
This is all in one piece. So 32 and verses 1 and 2 actually just they're if you read it as one
Yeah,
bit, not separated.
yeah,
That
that's
would.
a very important point to make here. But do you have anything else?
No, I just
I,
wanted, people, you're saying back to chapter 10.
yeah,
And I mean, I understand what you're saying. I know they do too, but also that there is no chapters and
yeah,
there are no verses. They were just put in to help us read.
yeah. If I
And
remember correctly, we didn't have chapter separations, verse separations, any kind of story
headings, yeah.
titles until the
15th
ninth century.
was the ninth century. Okay.
Um, some changes might have been made in the maybe 1500s, as you were saying, but uh, the original idea started, I believe, in the ninth century. Um, don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. Actually, just for intellectual integrity's sake, uh, just so you know that I'm aware that I do make mistakes. Last episode, I know, right? I was, I've been wrong once. It is what it is. But I mentioned Uruk being because of the name Eric that we read is the is one pronunciation of the word Uruk, which is a city in um, ancient Mesopotamia. And I made the mistake of saying, and that's where Abraham is from. But Abraham is actually from Ur, which is a different city. And I just wanted to, even though I cut that out of the uh,
Last episode.
last episode in final editing, um, I just wanted to mention how the sausage is made sometimes and how I am just a fallible human being.
Well, I mean, it would have given the impression that, oh, so he's not from Ur, he's from Ur. But you're clarifying this to make sure that, even though you didn't say it, you're clarifying the fact that
Yeah.
you make mistakes, but you've just corrected it. you know so and that's what we try to do is hold our integrity to the highest level, because we make mistakes and we don't mind people correcting us, and we really love it when we correct ourselves, because
Yeah. Yeah.
but as you were saying, and I'm sorry I interrupted, I probably just added a lot of.
No, that's good. That's good. Look, integrity is all we have in the end. If we don't have integrity, we have nothing else. So I just wanted to put that out there. Now, going back to the story at hand, verse 32 in chapter 10 goes, and I'm going to read through 11, verse 2. These were the families of the sons of Noah according to their generations in their nations, and from these the nations were divided on the earth after the flood. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech, and it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Now, the key word here is the earth. The word translated as the earth is eretz, um, and it means the earth, but it also means the land of or country of. And we see that in modern times, especially when we're talking about Israel. Many times we'll say Eretz Israel or Haaretz, so the land of Israel, or simply the land. And everybody knows who knows that we're talking about Israel, even if we just say Haaretz, the land. Um, and this is important for this conversation because, for reasons we're going to discuss in a little bit, the Sumerians also called their empire, their um, loose association of city states, Haaretz, the land. Uh, so the question becomes: Is the Bible, is Moses, is the Holy Spirit using the word land in the earth sense or in the land of, country of sense? And it's both. The answer is it's both. In verse 32 in chapter 10, it's talking about the whole earth. In verse 1, when it says the whole earth, that's when we start having questions because of verse 2, which says the land of Shinar. So clearly, when it says the Eretz, or the land, in this case, it's talking about the region of earth called Shinar, the land of Shinar, the country of Shinar, which is the ancient Sumerian empire, the land between the two rivers, the southern part of Mesopotamia. Um, so, verse 1 is a bridge between the whole earth and the land of Shinar. So, that second earth that's couched between the two is where it's where the switch happens, and it's um, signaling that switch. So when it says in our in most translations, when it says the whole earth had one language and one speech, it's actually talking about the land of Shinar itself, southern Mesopotamia, where the Sumerian Empire found its beginnings. And that's why I believe that there's two separate dispersions that the Bible is talking about. The one that happened after the flood, as early as soon after they came out of the boat, and a second dispersion, a dissolving of the Sumerian Empire later on, about 100 years or so later on. So that's the first thing. Um, as far as the bricks and using bitumen or asphalt, as it's translated here, um, I never actually thought of looking into the significance of them using asphalt itself, except that it seems to um, it's a different construction technology that neither the Ubaid culture used before the Sumerians invaded. And okay, and here's another thing. It says, and this also is another hint at there being two separate dispersals, because it says they traveled or journeyed from the east. If if Noah and his sons came off the ark in um, eastern Anatolia, in the ancient homeland of the Urartans, in in the mountains of Ararat, which is Ararat is Urartu. Um, Shinar, southern Mesopotamia, is south of that, not east, not west of that. So, people were already dispersing. We can already tell that from this, and they're coming from the east. So, given that the lands north of where Ararat is, Europe and um, Asia, given that they're north, and Ham is and his descendants are in Africa, it seems that whoever came was from the family or descendants of Japhet, not a Shemite or Semitic people, not a Hamitic people. So that's the first thing. But then talking about material culture, the Ubaid culture that existed in the land of Shinar before the Sumerians, we don't know what language they spoke. They existed and came to an end before the invention of writing. But materially, it seems that the Sumerians, when they moved in, adopted some material culture from them while possibly maintaining their own language. So they half assimilated into the Ubaid culture while maintaining their own um, religion and their own language, uh, potentially. Because we know that the Sumerian language is completely different from any other language on earth. It has no living, or as far as we know, extinct language relatives. It's a language isolate, as they're called, just like Basque is today in Europe, uh, as well as some others. But it may be that they came from the precursor to the Mohenjo-daro or Indus Valley cultures, and maybe they branched off of there and came and settled in the land of Shinar, which would later become the land of Babylon, the beginnings of the Babylonian Empire. And one of the differences that they either adopted from the Ubaids, but if I remember correctly, the Ubaids didn't really use bitumen either, or asphalt as it's translated here. So it seems like it's a novelty that they invented outside of Mohenjo-daro, Indus Valley culture, and outside of or independent of the Ubaid culture. But other than that, I have no other thoughts, and that was way too long. I'm sorry.
Um, the commentary that I was reading about this talked about, instead of waiting on bricks to dry in the normal fashion of just sunbaked, it's a significant showing of man is not wanting to wait on the natural, that he is always in a hurry and wanting to become something greater on his own.
Yeah.
So baking the bricks, he's doing that on his own to accelerate his desire to be something greater,
Yeah.
which is what they're actually trying to do in
Yeah.
a sense when as we read further about getting up there, so to speak.
Yeah. Actually, in previous episodes, I kept repeating. We keep going back to the garden, and there's actually a hint of that in here too, when it says, "And they journeyed from the east," because when Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, where did they go? They went to the east. When um, Cain was condemned and sentenced by God for murdering his brother, where did he go? He went into the land in the east, the land of Nod, the land of the vagabonds, the wanderers, hunter gatherers, potentially. Um, so the history is people always going east, away from uh, where they originally were. And if we, take a mystical or spiritual look at the Garden of Eden, which and the fall of humanity, which that's its main topic, anyways. When people leave, when people are expelled from God's presence, they go to the east. They go to no man's land, and these people are coming back from the east. And the first thing they're doing is they're trying to build a temple, a tower that reaches to the sky, so they can go back
Mm-hmm.
to where the journey started from. So again, there's a parallel there. And the funny thing is, uh, the tower becomes important in biblical theology, not because that's where the dispersion took place, but because of its spiritual meaning and impact. In this chapter, we see people trying to build a tower, a mini mountain, to go back to the garden, go back to heaven, go back to paradise. And in chapter 28, verse 12, what does Jacob experience? He sees a dream, a vision in his sleep in the middle of the night where there's a ladder reaching up to heaven and angels are ascending and descending above it. And he sees the Son of Man atop of it. And um, he hears God's voice and he says, "This place is the house of God. It's Bethel." And what's interesting is the word that we use for the city of Babel, not this city as we're going to discuss later, but what became the city of Babylon, which grew into the empire of Babylon. Um, it literally means the gates of heaven. And we see the gate of heaven open up for Jacob. Humanity tries to force their way in, and we're going to see it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But God invites us in. And later in John 1:51, Jesus identifies himself as the ladder that Jacob saw. And he says to Nathanael, you will see the angels of heaven ascending and descending on the Son of Man, which was, of course, Jesus's favorite epithet for himself. Epithet, not epithet. But so the Bible, through subtle hints, is connecting all three stories together for us to learn this very important lesson. I guess we're done. We can go home now. But yeah.
Where are we? Oh, verse 4. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." You know, it says so much about how man is self-centered.
Yeah.
Just wanting to be separate from God. And it's like, let us do this. We're going to do this ourselves. We're going to build this tower. We're going to make a name, and we're going to rule. And I know the tower didn't go up into the heavens, of course. I don't know how many stories it would have been, but the point is that they were making a statement, and that was going to be their type of religion that they're going to build this with and make a name so that they can push God out and not have to listen to his rules and regulations and make their own lives. We're going to find out it really didn't work that well, but I mean, it's just that one verse. It really correlates to a lot of things that are happening now, with the LGBTQ, and they're trying to make themselves, and they're doing a good job of separating themselves from not just us Christians or people that are against them, but they try to laugh at the face of God and mock him with a rainbow. And I don't even want to be in the same state when God decides to bring down punishment. But and I know we've said this before. We don't hate the LGBTQ. No. We hate the sin, but we love the people, and we want to see them come to salvation in Christ.
I mean, it really is a picture of every other religion on earth except for the biblical Judeo-Christian faiths. It's a picture of Islam. It's a picture of Hinduism. It's a picture of Buddhism, Jainism, Baha'ism, whatever, you name it. Because it's humans trying to pave their own road to heaven. We're trying to do this to go to heaven. If you do good works, you'll go to heaven. If you slaughter enough cows in the streets of Istanbul, you'll go to heaven. If you get the picture. This is perhaps, if not if not as far as timing goes, but spiritually, the beginning of human made religion. Yeah. And it does not save.
Verse 5, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the earth, of all the earth. Which leads me to a question, and it may sound stupid, but that's okay. He scattered them from abroad over all the face of the earth. So is it possible that he did an Enoch job and took them away and put them somewhere else?
It's possible.
Well, it sounds far-fetched, but
is it likely? Not likely.
That sounds like a fun thing, though.
Like, I know.
The first
it does. But, I mean, again, the that would depend kind of the probability that we ascribe to that would depend on.
I just wanted to have fun with you, but go ahead.
I mean, well, we're having fun. We're talking about it, but it would depend on the meaning of land again, since it's framed within the sense of the land of Shinar, the land of southern Mesopotamia. I would suggest that it's talking about that land, not the whole earth, and that makes sense when we look back to what we know about history. And that's why I keep bringing up the Sumerians, because so first of all, we mentioned that Babylon means the gates of heaven, and it's not just the name of one city. It's actually a title given to at least half a dozen cities in the land of Shinar. One of these is the city of Borsippa, which predates the Babylon that we think of when we read this by approximately 400 years. So Borsippa was settled sometime around 2700 BC. And the Babylon that we think of when we read this was settled sometime around 2300 BC. So why is this important? Intellectual curiosity, intellectual honesty, just understanding the Bible better, understanding the word better. So, and that's what we're about on this channel. So, Borsippa is not only 400 years older, but it also has a famous ziggurat complex within it. A complex, a tower, a religious institution that was built and left and just abandoned. The construction was abandoned, like here. And it predates the Tower of that we think of when we think of Babylon itself. Now that tower, oh Lord, I forgot its name. The whole complex, Etemenanki, I think. Don't quote me on that. The whole complex was a lot bigger, a lot more complex, and had different temples devoted to different gods. But uh, this one is older, and not only is it older, but the Talmud itself actually uh, identifies Borsippa as the city where um, the tongues were divided. In fact, the name of the uh, city, the name of the temple itself is the Tower of Tongues. Um, so that is another ancient uh, hint at Borsippa being the tower. From the earliest times, that tower is the one that's identified um, as the tower where these events took place. Um, so, what was going on in this time? Um, why? What else do we have that might suggest that this is specifically talking about a local dispersion or imperial dissolving? Is because now a few key dates to remember is the Bible told us that um, the earth was divided during the days of Peleg, and Peleg was born roughly 2437 BC, and he died around 2228 BC. Um, so the at the time, the Sumerians were ruling this area. So we can think of it on top of the other hints that we saw already, that this is talking about Sumerians and the Sumerian Empire because of the dates. Um, some other dates that we can think of is that um, Terah, which we're going to see, which is Abraham's father, was born and lived between 2316 and 2111. And Abraham was born and died between 2246 and 2071. Where I'm going with that is the Sumerian Empire peaked between 2900 and 2100 BC. Um, they were flourishing as independent city states, but they had a sense of union amongst themselves. They worked collectively when necessary. Um, and they some of the most famous city states were Ur, Uruk, Lagash, Eridu, and at this time, when Sargon of Akkadian started invading uh, the Sumerian Empire around 2334, Babylon was still a backwater city. He describes Babylon as a cow town for the most part, spiritually and politically insignificant. That's another reason why we can say that Borsippa was probably the tower, because Babylon didn't have anything going at the time. Um, and then Sumer experienced a temporary revival from 2100 to 2004 BC. Uh, but in 2004, the Akkadians sacked the city of Ur, which is where Terah and Abraham are from. Or, I said the Akkadians. I meant the Arameans or the Amorites and the Elamites. So people from the east and the west were working together to put an end to Sumerian rule in Ur. And during this time, Sumerian, so during their rise, the peak of their power between 2900 and 2100, not only Sumerian was not only the language of the empire, but it was the lingua franca of the entire region, used for uh, political and um, trade reasons. So, because Sumer had little trade colonies, trading posts throughout southeastern Anatolia. Haran was a trading post. They went all the way 240 miles northwest of there. Kültepe in modern Turkey was a another major trading port or trading post, I should say, that the Sumerians had. So, and those lands were under the control of the uh, Hurrian people, the Mitanni Empire. So uh, their language was spread out amongst their neighbors. Even that's what they used to hold official talks between nations and did business in. But when the construction ends and it says the languages um, were mixed up, uh, sometime in this area, we see other languages, the non-Sumerian peoples that lived under Sumerian rule and outside of their borders, their languages start to become more prominent. Languages like um, Akkadian, which is a Semitic language, Aramaic, Hebrew, Arabic later on, Ugaritic, which is where modern day Lebanon is, um, Chaldean, Turoya, Sabaik, Minaik, Mehri, Sukotri, Shehri, or Jubali, some people call it, Harsusi and Batari and Hobiot, and even in um, Ethiopia, modern Ethiopia, the Gez and Amharic and Tigray languages become dominant, and these are all Semitic languages, have nothing to do with Sumerian. And it seems that as it happens when an empire crumbles, the languages that were suppressed in political and trade life become democratized. The koine, as in Greek, um, become the people's language becomes the dominant language in the area, and so as the empire crumbles, the languages become not confused but mixed up. So there's and that explains why people no longer understood one another if they're not speaking the common language, which was Sumerian, but they're speaking, you know, Proto-Hebraic and Akkadian and Aramaic and whatever. Next thing you know, I mean, they're from the same language family. They evolved out of the same language, so they share a lot of words. Even today, between Arabic and modern Hebrew, there's about 8,000 shared words, and um, famously, Sesame Street in Israel, the Israeli production only uses those words that are shared so that both the Arabs and the Jews can understand it. Um, yeah, just like in modern times when the Ottoman Empire crumbled, Arabic became dominant in Arab lands. Turkish remained dominant in um, Anatolia. Greek became dominant in Greece. Bulgarian became dominant in Bulgaria. Serbian became dominant in Serbia, Albanian became dominant in Albania. Basically, what I'm saying is we have a modern analogy for this. Um, yeah,
Was it like I think there's over 2,700 different languages right now,
yeah, I don't
uh,
know.
and of course all the dialects from those.
Yeah,
You know, because you look at uh, the language that Mexicans speak and the language that people in Spain speak. It's very similar,
but it has its difference.
but it's got its difference.
Yeah.
Even here, if you go down to Louisiana, you know, you've got the French Quarter down there, and they've got a dialect that they use that,
Yeah.
you know, a person in California would be like, huh?
Yeah.
You know, what even, I'm like, what? You know, I have no idea what you're saying because the dialect is so off kilter from the you know, American language, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just in that small area.
Yeah.
And
I mean, a shout out to just reminds me of Lorenzo from Lost in the Pond. He's another YouTube creator. I don't know if he's a believer or not, but he's a British guy that married a good old American girl and moved to Indiana and then to Chicago and whatever. But he does these videos about the differences between Britain and America, and he has this humor, and a lot of the things are different words that we use to describe the same things.
mm-hmm.
Is it a biscuit or a scone or a cookie?
Yeah.
Are they flip flops or thongs? When we say thongs, we mean something completely different. But Australians and Englanders, they use thong for flip flops. And is it a shrimp or a prawn? Is it a grill or a barbecue? Bobby.
Bobby. Put something on the Bobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a lot of fun with that. But unfortunately, I never really cared about learning another language. I speak American. Now, I do try to respect, like when I was in the military, now I've been to Egypt and I've been to Qatar, and you know, you can't just learn language overnight. But when you pick up certain things, I try to say those things in their language just out of respect because, Americans are very self-absorbed and think that everybody in the whole world should speak English.
Yeah, they should, but
or speak American because English is in England. But it's like kind of reminds me of an episode in MASH where Frank Burns is saying, well, he said something about, well, these people should speak English, but you're in Korea, but it doesn't work that way. And if you go to a country, it's very polite to try to speak their language.
Yeah.
With the understanding that you're going to get it wrong and you apologize for saying it wrong, not because you're being disrespectful. It's just that, you ask, how do I say telephone in your language, and from my experience and maybe yours, people are very open to helping you speak their language or, understand that you're going to get it wrong. And
most people love it.
And you can laugh at yourself for saying it wrong.
Yeah, most people love it. I mean, in Turkey, whenever a missionary or a tourist came by and showed some kind of interest, they would fall in love with that person and just like, yeah, come on to my house, let's have some tea, let's have some cheese and simit or Turkish bagel, I call it, or whatever. People love it.
And some of the habits they have. One thing in particular that has stuck with me for let's see, when did I go to Egypt? 91. We were going around town. Somebody was showing us around town, going to these different shops, and they said, "Hey, yeah, sit down." They're very and they spoke English very well. Good thing. But I sat down, and most Americans will sit down and they'll have the leg crossed like
Mm-hmm.
this, and I was sitting like this, and the guy was like, that's not how you're supposed to. You don't ever show the bottom of your foot to anybody like that. He said, and that's why they sit with their leg crossed like
Yeah.
this. I've I've had that habit ever since. I don't
Yeah.
normally put my foot up like that, and it's not the fact that I believe it's disrespectful, but if somebody was to see that and feel that way, so I try to be respectful of who might be around. You never know.
Yeah.
So I've always just crossed my leg like yeah. I know mostly women do that. I don't listen to that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to make fun of people that do it, but
Yes.
I do it too. Or I used to before when I was 80 pounds lighter and I could actually cross my legs like that. Unfortunately, I can't anymore.
But,
Hopefully, I'm going to get there.
And it's just having respect.
Yeah.
And if you want respect, you give respect. Always first. Don't wait for them to respect you. You go out and you do it first, because it shows them. I'm talking about if you're in another country, it shows them that you care, and that you're interested, and that you're respectful.
Yeah. Oh my God, I already hear the youngsters saying, "Oh, y'all boomers," because I was about to say something and I forgot, but oh yeah, people these days, the youngins these days say, respect is earned, not given. Well, the way you earn respect is by showing respect. That means your personal respect is earned by giving other people unearned respect, if that makes sense. Just a little tidbit for our younger viewers.
Yeah. Well, the unearned respect is like if somebody comes up to you and insults you, you don't insult them back. You give them respect.
Yeah.
A lot of tension rises when you start disrespecting, and that's how wars break out, right?
Yeah.
But but you're right. Respect, it's a big thing, and that's the lesson for today.
Respect your elders.
Respect your elders. All right, here we go. Verse 10. We're going to be talking about descendants, Shem's descendants, and you'll notice throughout this, all the way down to Abraham, that most of the lives are getting shorter and shorter in the years.
Mm-hmm.
I think we start out with like 500 years old, and then it goes down to 400, and then it goes down to, and it kind of bounces around a little bit. But lives are getting shorter, and to the point where they basically 120 years and less.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons is the Earth had to be repopulated, and the only way to do that was to extend life to a certain extent, because these guys kept having sons and daughters throughout their 300, 400 years old.
Yeah.
To repopulate the earth up to a certain point. And God knew that. God knew where to stop this. And it's kind of odd because up until the flood, everybody was living up to 900 years old, plus or minus.
Yeah.
And there may be certain reasons, maybe greenhouse effect reasons or whatever. And then after the flood, that greenhouse effect may have been destroyed somehow or other, and lives started getting shorter. You want to go down that rabbit hole? You want to save it for another day?
I mean, we can, because I've been bugged by it for a couple of days, especially now too, because one of our viewers, one of y'all, commented on one of our shorts where we were talking about Enoch's life and how he lived 365 days. And
years.
Or years.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry. See, I was wrong again. Twice.
No, you were just checking to see if I was paying attention. That's all it was.
Okay, we'll go with that. But they were questioning that, to put it mildly. And it got me thinking. That's one way that they use to calculate how long ago a certain fossil lived, or a skeleton, a person. Um, it's by comparing the number of mutations, and they, um, based on modern, and there's several assumptions that go into it, right? Like most likely, just like when they talk about geological events, the idea is that there's a smooth, steady rate of mutation throughout the ages. And they base it on what they've monitored in modern day. So they'll take a grandfather, a son, and a grandson's DNA and compare it to one another. And they say, okay, so per generation, it's about, I can't remember exactly, what, 30 base pairs or something like that. Whatever. A certain number of mutations happen, and they usually just leave it like that. So when you go deeper, you find out that, oh, there are certain uh, conditions that could cause a change in the rate of mutation, like exposure to radiation, like, and that's usually in the somatic stuff um, that don't get passed on to the next generation necessarily. But there are some things that can change how the mutations that do get transferred to the next generations, how fastly they uh, change and mutate. And I haven't been able to find any good number or any good information data, I should say, on that. But they were saying there were times that where it might have been twice as uh, fast that mutations happened, and but nothing too crazy. Well, a 100% increase in the rate of mutation is pretty crazy to me, just thinking mathematically, right? um, there's a difference between calculating the average and the geometrical average. um, Compounding, like interest,
Mm-hmm.
changes a whole thing. You can go from $1 debt to $1,000 debt in no time with compounding. So I have no proof for this because the information is inaccessible to me at the moment. But it is possible that people mutated, that our DNA mutated faster, a lot faster in the past. That could explain.
The past as in before the flood?
Yeah. So there there might be an explanation, a biological explanation, to how and why people lived so much longer before the flood. Now, my base theory on that is actually related to the Sumerian king list and the inflated numbers there. You know, kings reigning 28,000 years or so, 28,842 something, 43,000 years, whatever. And there seems to be a numerological thing going on that we have lost the significance in the sands of time. So that's my base assumption. Right? The two are connected somehow, and they share a similar, not, I'm not going to say worldview, but a similar philosophy in inflating the numbers. That could be one thing. But there could be a biological explanation, and I know a lot of people's going to hate this, an evolutionary explanation, because we know that our DNA mutates. So there is a process of evolution. Now, do I think the evolution process that is put forth by science is reading too much into that? Yes, for whatever reason, you know. But there is a process. There is an evolution of our DNA that we can see from generation to generation. Now, does that lead to speciation? I don't know, but uh, where were we going with that? Oh, longer years. Just to address our conversation with one of our viewers, and bring it to the wider public. Uh, it's quite possible that our dating of these fossils based on the number of genetic mutations could be faulty because of faulty um, assumptions that underlie the process. What we think might be a 3 million year old fossil might just be 10 years old, 10,000 years old. There's how quickly, because it's not only the number of mutations in lifetime, but the speed at which DNA decays after death. There's what would happen in ideal conditions, then there's what happens in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the um, climate controlled environment of a lab, there's heat, there's cold, there's animal predation. Um,
Well, it's like they use to find out uh, how long somebody's been dead, and they use, this may sound bad, but they use bodies and they put them in different scenarios.
yeah,
This one here is just straight buried in dirt
yeah,
and left, and then this one here is uh, buried in mud and leaves and whatnot, and this one here has been subject to this kind of environment,
yeah,
and they do that to learn, you know, the process of decay
yeah. And the problem is, how have those conditions changed in a specific location
and time.
over 5,000 years?
Mm-hmm.
We know what the climate might have been like. We have ideas, but just the other day, it was raining cats and dogs in Birmingham, but we were dry, dry up here for a few more hours. In our own yard, there's differences in soil, like right next to it. Go to the Amazon. At one point, in one section, there's terra preta, the nice, beautiful black soil that was engineered by humans. And then there's the rest of the Amazonian rain forest soil that's you can't really farm on, and they're burning these trees, clearing the land to, you know, plant plantations, and it's not really working that well outside of those terra preta areas. But there's limestone, there's other stones, there's clay, and all sorts of different conditions in within the same geographical area. So how do you, and it's at our level of computing ability, it's impossible for us to perfectly calibrate and know how conditions changed over that long of a time, even in a tiny area such as my backyard. So how can we generalize that and good dates, solid dates on these fossils and skeletal remains. Um, let alone calculate. Where I was going with that was uh, perhaps at one time human bodies developed slower, so that today we look at a fossil and we say, oh, he was about 30 years old, blah blah, but maybe he was 130 years old because he developed slower, because of environmental conditions, because of life stressors that were different than ours.
Yeah, because I mean, it would kind of make sense the slower, because read, these people didn't have kids until they were 100 or so,
Yeah,
and then as time went by after the flood, it started getting younger and younger
yeah.
when they had started having kids. So that there was a big change
A few
in that.
decades, if you told people that there's a shark that can live 400 and something years, they would call you crazy. And then they found the Greenland sharks that live 400 something years. There's one that's almost 500 years old. There, I mean, who? I think was it Dick Cheney? Who was it that said, "Oh, it was Bush Jr." There are knowns. There are things that we know, and then there are things that we don't know, and then there are things that we don't know that we don't know. There are things that we don't know until we find out, and then we know that we didn't know, but now we know. So let's keep an open mind, right? And I guess this is a perfect time to say this is our weekly spiel, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting a benefit out of this, if you're being blessed by this, if you're learning, or if you're gain new perspectives on biblical topics that we're discussing, if this is of any benefit to you, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Not only comment to praise what we're doing or whatever if it's worth that, but also to share your concerns, to share your thoughts, because as we've been saying this whole time, we might not have thought of something in a certain way, and we might be blessed by what you have. We might be wrong in a certain way, and you might bring us clarification and bring correction to us in one
That's
area.
very important.
And
Make sure the truth comes out.
yeah, that's what we're here for. We're here to learn together, to dig deeper, and find the truth. We love the truth. We might not have all the information, but we love the truth. So if you know something to be true that we didn't know and you want to share that with us, we would be eternally grateful. And it helps the channel. And if you want the gospel to be shared with as many people as possible, that's one way you can help make it happen, by engaging with the video that you're watching, liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting, um, because that tells YouTube that what we're doing is valuable, and there is, for the lack of a better term, a market out there for it. And then they will push these videos in front of other people. And, so far, I think in every episode, or nearly every episode, we said this. We haven't said it yet, so I'm going to say it again. We are saved by grace through faith in Christ Jesus. If you want this message shared, please support us with those simple things. They're free. We're not asking for your money. Maybe one day, but we don't need it right now. Right? We don't need your money right now. We need this is a low overhead um, operation right now. We would love to be able to hire professional editors and grow the channel and grow our reach through other means, but we're not there, and we're not asking for donations. We're not a ministry in the sense of, in a legal sense.
Mhm.
You know, we set this up as a corporation for legal reasons, but what we're doing is a ministry in spirit. So we want to honor that and let you know um, how you can help us if you choose to. And right now, we need your prayers and we need your engagement with the videos.
Exactly. Uh, so with that, um, we are looking at giving you the opportunity,
Oh, yeah.
and hopefully uh, we'll get a good response on this. But if you are part of a church, doesn't matter if you're just uh, part of the congregation or if you're working in a specific place in the church. But if you have T-shirts, we're looking at getting the address for you to send us, preferably 2 T-shirts, one for me and one for him, to show your support of your church. We want to explain who you are, where you're located. We need a brief description of your church, what your beliefs are, because we will uh, uh, make sure that this is a Bible believing, Christ centered church.
Yeah.
We don't want to invite just anybody because our beliefs. This is our channel, so we're allowed to, you know,
Feature whoever we choose to.
yes. So just keep in mind, and we are interested in promoting your church wherever it is, whether if it's in the U.S. Or if it's Australia, China. We'll wear that shirt and we'll be glad to promote your church, and we will let you know ahead of time when we will be wearing that particular T-shirt.
Yeah.
Because we just love to advertise Christ and
Yeah.
especially in different areas.
Yeah. When somebody from Turkey or Iran or Saudi Arabia or India or wherever hears the gospel and they want to go and find out more, or some uh, even in the U.S. that were unchurched, that did not grow up in the church, don't know anything about um, the gospel. When they hear the gospel and they want to find out more about it, we want to be able to um, point them to someone that can help them locally in their community. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
So I think it'll be fun to see the uh, different shirts and maybe slogans that they have. Uh, I think we may promote our church first.
Yeah.
uh, but look for that information in the near future. We'll probably announce it and probably have it on the website
Yeah.
when we start that. And that's a promise that we will wear your shirt. And we will promote your church, and it's free advertisement. We're not charging you anything,
No.
I guess, other than just give us a shirt, please. We don't want to pay for everybody's shirt.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to get very far. So, like I said, we'll get that address up, and we'll take it from there. And even if it's if we can't read it, and I'm not saying it has to be in English.
No.
But if you will write down what that shirt is saying, like if we get one from China, and it most likely will be in Chinese language there, but let us know what it says.
Yeah.
Because not that it's important for other Chinese to understand what it says, but other people in your slogan may bring something to mind to another church. It's like, hey, that's a good slogan name.
Yeah.
Maybe we can use part of that or whatever. So it'll be fun.
And just to be clarified, we will try to wear every shirt, but if 1,000 churches send at the same time,
It might take a while.
that's 20 years worth of shirts.
Well, if it takes that long.
God willing, we live that long.
We can showcase a T-shirt for 15 minutes, and then we'll go change real quick, or you can wear one, and I can wear one.
Yeah,
different one. But that would be great if it was 1,000 shirts come in. But
oh man, that would be such a blessing.
But yeah, keep that in mind. We'll get that information out to you, and we'll carry on.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Back to the descendants here, Shem's descendants. So we're, like he said, we're narrowing down to who we're following, and it's going to be Shem. This is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and begot sons and daughters. Arphaxad lived 35 years and begot, now he's lived 35 years, and now he's already having children. He begot Salah. After he begot Salah, Arphaxad lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. Salah lived 30 years and begot Eber. After he begot Eber, Salah lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. Eber lived 34 years and begot Peleg. And we heard this name earlier back in chapter 10. After he begot Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and begot sons and daughters. Peleg lived 30 years and begot, is that Reu or Reu?
I would say Reu.
Okay. After he begot Reu, Peleg lived 209 years and begot sons and daughters. Reu lived 32 years and begot Serug. After he begot Serug, Reu lived 207 years and begot sons and daughters. So we're looking at these years dwindling down quite a bit, and we're looking at procreation happening much earlier nowadays. Now it's in their 30s. Serug lived 30 years and begot Nahor. After he begot Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and begot sons and daughters. Nahor lived 29 years and begot Terah. After he begot Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and begot sons and daughters. Now Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And it's just, I know it's quick, with these ages dwindling down for length of years living, and then of course having children, it quickly got down in the lower ages, mainly in the 30s. For some reason, Terah was 100 years old when he, I don't know if this means that he didn't have children before them. It doesn't say he did, doesn't say he didn't. He just says, it just signifies that 100 years old, 119, he begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Yeah. Or let me correct that. After
Terah.
After Terah, Nahor lived 119 years, begot sons. Okay, now Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. It's not saying that he didn't have children before that, but I think even if he did, the focus is on Abram, Nahor, and Haran.
Yeah, and this is another aspect that makes me think that there was a biological change taking place, a genetic mutation taking place, because not only are the general longevities being reduced, but so is the, for better or worse, the age of sexual maturity seems to be decreasing at the same time. So people are maturing faster and having children faster than they did in previous generations. Kind of signals to me that there was a change, a genetic change, a biological change that we have not identified scientifically just yet.
And it happened in a short period of time. All the names that I named, of course, I know those are generations looking at, but considering the fact that from this point back to Adam and Eve. That length of time, having people living in their 600 and 700, 800 years, that was quite a few generations. Compared to this is a shorter time span, and not losing, but not living as old as the previous generation. So I think it kind of quickly changed in that sense.
Yeah.
Was there anything you wanted to add to these descendants, or?
Not really. I'm just having thoughts of our previous discussion before we started recording. Just it could be that the flood was the same one that Randall Carlson always talks about, and he's not a believer. He's a agnostic at best, but he has done a lot of work uncovering evidence of an ancient flood that took place during the Younger Dryas, and he ties it with convincing evidence to meteor impact. And we're talking about how that might have been the catalyst to Pangea splitting up and actual continental shifts happening. And it could also, it could be the catalyst to the changing lifespans. If this happened at a time where, let's say, the climate changes so rapidly, it could have not only altered people's individual lifespans, but it could have triggered some of the contributors to genetic mutation, as far as we know. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of information that I could find that explains it at our level, without giving us those childish answers of, well, this and that, but yeah, that's just a thought that crept into my mind, and thought I'd share it.
Alrighty. Verse 27. This is the genealogy of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran begot Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in his native land in Ur of the Chaldeans. Then Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai. I'm sorry, Abram's wife was Sarai. And the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren; she had no child. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot and the son of Haran and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son's Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. And they came to Haran and dwelt there. So the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Like, you try to read that real fast, you just really get confused on that. But the main focus is the fact of you've got Abram and Lot and Sarai. They're going to be the main focus coming up next.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's something interesting here. I don't know if anybody caught it, but it says Ur of the Chaldeans. And that's an anachronism because the Chaldeans did not exist as a separate political entity at this time. So what do we know from this? Even in Moses' day, like if we go past the events of this passage here, and go to the days of the person who actually committed them to paper or parchment back then, um, Chaldeans did not exist as a separate political entity just yet. So what's going on here? We say Moses wrote this, but some scholars say, oh, but no, it's 5 different sources that were cobbled together by scribes. It is because of instances like this that they say that. However, we were just talking about last episode about the, and I forgot to write it down, so I can't remember the name of the place again. But the stone with Paleo Hebrew
Oh,
on it in
yeah.
Egypt, in the southern.
Starts with the M, doesn't it?
No, that's actually a different one.
Oh, you're thinking of something else.
You're
My
thinking
bad.
about Mesha, the Mesha
Okay.
stele, and because we talked about that too.
Mhm.
But no, there's another one that actually dates back to between the 18th or 1800s and 1500s before Christ. And guess what time that was? 1800s is the time of roughly the time of Abraham. Well, actually, it's actually if I do my math correctly, it's actually a few centuries after Abraham. But trying to remember exactly who the patriarch would be at the time. It would be after Joseph. But basically, the time of uh, the sojourn in Egypt, and 1500 would be right before Moses. So Moses would have been born, I can't remember off the top of my head, but 1480s or so before Christ. And so they already had an alphabetic language, or an alphabet with which they could write their language and write the Bible as we have it today.
The Rosetta Stone?
No, that
Same
different
one,
one.
huh? I'm
Different
guessing.
one.
I'm just shooting that.
But I mean, that's an important stone too. But no, not that one. Um, and so, for a person with Moses' education, for him to write the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, is no big thing. Until that stone was found, the assumption was that Moses couldn't have written it because there was no alphabetic, um, there was no alphabet the way we know it today. There were hieroglyphs, or there was cuneiform, which are actually syllables, not letters, individual letters. When we think about a language, we think about letters, and you know, in order to express the complex ideas that are in the Bible, you have to have a modern alphabet style writing system. Cuneiform is not as easy to use for that. Still better than the hieroglyphs, which are a lot harder to interpret. So now that we found that stone, we know that Moses could have written it. So there's no reason for us to dismiss that offhand anymore. For my critics out there, for my skeptics out there, I love y'all, but the assumptions were faulty. They were based on incomplete information. And as I keep saying, we find out new stuff when we learn something new. We have to change our views. We cannot cling to what we thought we knew when we really didn't know it. That would be hypocrisy, and unfortunately, scholarship is filled with that. The last 4 or 5 decades of archaeology has completely wrecked the last two centuries of German scholarship with regards to Judeo-Christian faith. Um, That doesn't mean some good stuff didn't come out of German scholarship, but it's mostly debunked and defunct. Um, but where I'm going with that is there are still signs, evidence, hints in the Bible that the text has evolved a little bit over time. And that's where we get the whole argument and debate over variance. One of our viewers commented on another video about variance, and you know how, and we were talking about Islam's view on the Bible and how they say, well, the Quran itself says the Bible was true, is true. So as far as Islam is concerned, when Muhammad was alive, the Bible was true. They say that they twisted it verbally, but not written. And we have copies of the Bible, different manuscripts, parts of manuscripts from 600 years before Muhammad even existed. Some, and I just read an article that was talking about the uh, Dead Sea Scrolls and how some of them, especially the biblical portions of them, uh, could be a lot older than originally thought. Some of them might even be the actual originals, which blows my mind. I don't know how they determined that. I'm looking forward to finding the actual journal article, peer-reviewed article, and trying to decipher that. I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait. But we do know that other hands have touched the text because of little tidbits like this, anachronistic names of mostly cities and empires. Um, this just tells us that the priests and scholars that have handled this text have not only preserved the written original, but they have preserved the original meaning by saying, hey, this Ur that it's talking about is the same Ur that we know today that's under Chaldean control. The Ur that's in the Chaldean kingdom or empire, it's the same Ur that it's talking about here. That's the whole purpose of the scribe putting this in here, is to let the readers of his generation know better where um, the Bible is talking about. Another example of this is in Exodus when it's talking about uh, Ramesses, the city of Ramesses being built by Jewish slaves. Um, it Ramesses did not exist. The city, the city's name was not Ramesses when Moses would have written those words. So that's another scribal clarification that's added into the text, kind of like a study note, so that people would know what city that Moses was talking about. Before it was named Ramesses, it was called Avaris, and that was the name while Moses was alive. Um, there's little bits and pieces, especially in the Torah, in the first 5 books, where we see this happening. And no variant of the thousands of variants that have been found in ancient manuscripts, not a single variant changes the meaning of the text. All it does, either in this case, it explains, It's a clarification. It helps us. It benefits us. And God bless the scribe that did that. But also, the vast majority of the variants are spelling differences. So it proves that the text is the same as it was before in meaning and in composition, in the sense that somebody copying a text in Egypt and somebody copying it in ancient Byzantium, modern day Istanbul, somebody in Rome or somebody in anywhere in France that made copies, they would have pronounced certain words differently. Yeah, they're reading the same Hebrew, they're reading the same Greek, depending on which part of the Bible we're talking about, but they would have pronounced it differently, and that could have caused differences in spellings. Just like the way an American will say color and spell it COLOR, and a Brit, the way they would pronounce it, which there's a bunch of different accents in that tiny little island nation. So I'm not going to even try to do it. But a Brit will spell it COULOR, right? Or is it
COLOUR?
OUR? Yeah, yeah. Okay. See, there you go. But somebody somewhere else might spell it COULOR, like I just did. It's a misspelling, but it doesn't change the meaning. It's the same word. It still means the specific wavelength of light that creates the effect of a certain thing that we perceive as
color.
color.
The spectrum of the prism.
Yeah.
And just the angle and
yeah. And so again, that's another proof that the Bible remains unchanged. That the Bible is dependable, at least the text over the millennia, is the same text. The words we read on this page, in the original languages especially, are the same words that the faithful have read and studied and learned since they were first committed to pen and paper, as the idiom goes. I mean, so yeah, just wanted to point that out.
We made it through another chapter.
One yeah, sitting. We did.
And I mean, from here out, it's it's going to be some good stuff. Not that the rest of it wasn't good, but
yeah,
we're really going to get into some good stories, and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So once again, if you're deriving any benefit out of this, if you think that anybody anywhere on earth could benefit from this, please like, subscribe, share, comment. Please put your thoughts in there, not just don't just pat our backs. We're not asking for that, but we're asking for your thoughts. We're asking you to join us in this conversation. I brought up 2 comments from y'all already, and I'm sure we'll bring up more comments as comes by. We want to hear what you think. We want you to put in suggestions for us, clarifications for us, not just encouragement. And if you want to put any prayer requests in there, or if you want to email us at support@firmfoundationspodcast.com, I'd love to read your prayer requests and pray for you. We both pray daily. We live by prayer. Yeah, especially with everything that's going on in our lives right now. Without prayer, we would be toast. And we would love the opportunity to pray for you too.
That same thing with the comments. Uh, We don't mind you commenting that you don't like something,
Yeah,
but try to use more than one word and explain why you feel that way. I mean,
yeah,
it's not going to hurt our feelings, what you write. If you if you've got a disagreement of any kind, uh, you know, if you just send, and I'll keep it decent. If you just write baloney and that's it, well, we have no idea what you're talking about.
yeah,
Uh, you know, for lack of something better to say, and he can cut this out if he wants. Show us a little bit of intelligence of what you're saying to us.
yeah,
you know, be an adult, be responsible, and explain yourself. We're not going to call you, anything. We want to come to either an agreement or agree to disagree, and it's
yeah,
okay. Just explain yourself why you don't like something,
yeah,
because we don't agree at all the time, and that's okay.
yeah.
Uh, but we are looking to help people that don't agree with us, or they don't completely understand us, and they just want to say baloney. But why baloney? Uh, you know, Tell us why you don't agree, and you know, we can agree to disagree, or we can help you understand what we're trying to get across.
Or we could see what your point is
Mhm.
and say, actually, they make a good point. You know, we want to do life together with you as best as we can
Mhm.
through the medium of this screen. Um, yeah, you might be in Sumatra or wherever. You might be in Timbuktu, as the saying goes.
Might be in Colorado.
You might be in Colorado, or you might be right next door, and we don't know.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter. We can still engage one another through the screen and through our conversations. And I mean, I look forward to our if you don't mind, go and check our shorts where most of the comments have been coming in, and read it. Uh, we try not to patronize anybody. We try to show the utmost respect, and we genuinely like read what you have to say with um, interest and with
And
an open
respect.
mind,
Yeah.
and we try to see where you're coming from and explain. Um, yeah. All that's being said, we love you and pray that God bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, and give you peace. Take care. See you next time.
See ya.